morning. Thank you for having me. I'm humbled to be here with all of you. I've read many of your papers and been listening for the past day and the morning so far. And I want to, I guess, piggyback on what James and Peter and Lucy kind of mentioned as far as we Homo sapiens, where are we now? And as an academic, I can tell you that a lot of what I've been seeing, at least at my home institution, regarding undergraduate biology education, even though we're here preaching to the choir, it's not translating into what I think it should, as far as what students should be taking home and how we can continue forward. First and foremost, I want to explain that I'm a biologist. More specifically, my expertise is in entomology, and even though I'm a big fan of Pierre Boulle, who wrote the book Planet of the Apes, I tend to look at our Earth as Planet of the Insects. So that's my little, I guess, bias. But overall, I consider myself a historian of life on Earth. And I guess that's where I fit into this small piece of big history. And when I was thinking about this talk, and so I apologize about the long title, but I wanted to sort of look at what do I mean when I consider undergraduate biology education? What are the components that sort of fall under the umbrella of big history? And the tie-in with the nature of science. At the end of the day, I'm biased because I think science is one of the most important ways of understanding our world and our universe. And not that the other ways of knowing are not important, of course they are, but I'm going to focus on what we call science. So, when I was young, in the 70s, I was a big fan of Carl Sagan. Are there any Carl Sagan fans here? I'm sure a lot of people. And so, one of the things that I sort of want to start off my class with in the first week even is to sort of bring that awe and inspiration that I think has been lost in all of the student learning outcomes and all of the assessments that we have to do, all of which are important. But I think what we've lost in this now reductionist, mechanistic way of looking at our universe, what big history does not do, fortunately, is that we get lost in the milieu of all the details. And so, starting off the session with, literally every single atom in our body, the calcium in your bones, the carbon in your genes, the iron in your blood, the gold in your filling. I don't know, do they still use gold fillings? Maybe not. Was created in the star billions of years ago. And of course, ironically, many indigenous cultures have been telling this story for thousands of years, at least something similar. But now science is also validating that. So you can see the context of those two coming together. They were, of course, formed billions of years earlier, shortly after the Big Bang. And we are a way of the universe to know itself. So some part of our being knows this is where we came from. We long to return to it. And we can because the cosmos is also within us. And of course, I'm borrowing these terms from Sagan, who famously said, we're made up of star stuff. And so I think, again, this gets lost in many lectures in biology, including my own. This is my 17th year now teaching in the higher institution. I taught middle school and high school about 8 years prior to that. And so one of the things that I've been trying to look at is how can we tie in the cosmic connection with the atoms in our bodies, and this way of sort of coming back to the idea of we are a thread in the cosmos. I say this because there was a comment made by one of the speakers yesterday that I want to sort of challenge, in that, of course, SETI is important. Of course, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is, I think, very important and very exciting. But whether we find it or not, I feel even more humbled to be here on this planet. And I think our students should understand that. We shouldn't think like, oh, we're alone in this cosmos. We should feel even more humbled that it took 14 billion years for me to be here with you right now. That's powerful. And I think that gets lost in the content that we're trying to impart, at least as far as biology is concerned. So, again, I was at a conference last November. This was a California Science Teacher Education Conference, I was invited to sort of share some ideas about what are some of the grand challenges in biology education. So I teach both biology majors, both undergrad and graduate, and I teach the non-majors biology course, which, by the way, I think is even more important because these are the folks who are going to go and communicate the science, whether they're journalists, communication majors, political science, policymakers, future lawyers. These are the folks who are taking the science and then imparting it. So, what is this work we call biology? I'll be asking more questions and giving answers. I think we can try to figure those out together. How should educators literally tell the story of life? It is a story, right? Pretty amazing one. And I think we're alive at the most perfect moment in time, if you will. Because we have the majority of the parts of the story. Yes, it's true. The more we know, the more we know we don't know. Right? I guess, something like that. What are the major milestones in biological discovery that expanded our knowledge of life on Earth? I used to think that just because I'm teaching biological evolution, students will get it. They'll get the story. Wrong. What's the context of evolution? That's important as well. And what role, if any, should the grand narrative of the formation of the universe and the complexity play in biology education? Of course, these are the threads that lead us to, I think, being the selfish Homo sapien, one of the most important questions of all time. What does it mean to be human? And that's what we're kind of leading to, if you look at the big history thresholds, and I disagree with my fellow colleague yesterday who was saying that there's 9 billion years missing, in the big history context as far as thresholds. I think that that story is still waiting to be written. So the chapter's there, we have a bookmark, a place for it, and the SETI research and all the other research is now going to fill in those pages. So I don't see it as missing, I just see it as, let's go, let's find out. All right. Students need content, of course they do, but they also require skills. This hit me back in November of 2016. I'm from the United States of America. We had a tragedy in November of 2016. We're still dealing with that tragedy. We hope that in about a year and a half that tragedy will be removed. But I realized that we in academia have failed. We failed. This is, like I said, 2016. We had students who voted, a lot of them who didn't, and the general public who is not thinking critically. And if we think that we're going to impart more and more content and that will cause critical thinking, completely false. Completely wrong. Textbooks are only getting thicker. My daughter's starting her biology major. I have nothing to do with it next year, actually this academic year. And the textbook is literally double the size as when I took biology. And that's normal because we know more, right? But when does that end? When does that end? So I think we should be focusing on how to teach students to think, to use the scientific methodology. And big history does that. They need to practice thinking critically and, of course, outside and inside of various disciplinary boundaries. And future citizens, both biologists and non-biologists alike, must become adept at making connections. We are literally at a turning point in our Homo sapien lives. My students always ask me, they're like, what's going to happen to the Earth? I'm saying, the Earth will be just fine. I'm worried about us. The Earth will be great. As a matter of fact, as a biologist, I may even make the point that as far as biodiversity is concerned, if we're taking out of the equation, the Earth might be better off. I'm not advocating for Homo sapiens to go extinct. I have 2 children here. I want to see grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But what I'm advocating for is that we need to think about this in a different lens. Status quo is not working. And so big history gave me that advantage. To look at my own field, biology, from that different angle. Charles Darwin, yes, was a naturalist. One can argue he was one of the first big historians. Right? I mean, biology majors didn't exist back at the time when Charles Darwin was studying. You were a naturalist. You studied everything. Geology, astronomy, living things. I hope at our next conference I'll give you some data, because now we're in the process of collecting that data as far as pre and post testing of what nature of science attributes and critical thinking is going to give us. So this is just a little promo. This has been stated over and over again. I'm going to skip on this slide. But I borrowed this from Mary Evelyn Tucker. I'm sure a lot of you have also heard of the Journey of the Universe project. If you have, can you raise your hands? A few of you, okay. And so, we are at a time in our lives where we need a good story. We're missing the story. And so, this is what orients and grounds us as humans. What motivates and inspires us. What awakens our imagination. What moves us to action. What gives us a sense of our place and role. My students come in every day, they work their butts off, they're also working outside of class, but they've lost their connection both with nature and where they belong. And I think big history can give them that grounding, can give them a sense of where we are right now and where we're headed. A biology textbook doesn't do that. The story of evolution of life on Earth alone does not do that. And this is a biologist saying this. Anybody heard of Thomas Berry? So Thomas Berry, again, essentially wrote the book on the new story, in which he made the case for integration of science and the humanities, describe how humans are part of the universe story of evolution with a sense of awe and wonder. We have missed bullet point 3 in the sciences. I was first told when I joined my department, you're too passionate. Cool it. Tone it down. Okay? If you're going to be this passionate, go and teach history. But I was like, wait a minute. Carl Sagan was passionate, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson is pretty passionate. Jacques Cousteau was passionate. These are the shoulders of which I stand upon. And so by cutting me down that way, and thinking that because you're a scientist, you have to be cold and dry. Excuse the accent. That's my Armenian accent. It wasn't Italian. What does that mean? This point number 3, I think, is the most important piece of the pie. Big history gives me that piece. Big history allows me to share the awe and wonder of who we are, all of our cousins around us, the birds, the plants, and everything else, and how we came to be. That story is amazing. That story is amazing. Okay. So what we did was, we made sure that we're using the CER methodology in our courses. Whenever there's a claim, students must follow it with evidence, and the reasoning for using the evidence in the context of that claim. Every single thing they say has to be using this model. Big history, with the evidence that they provide, gives me that context. As a matter of fact, the first week of class, I start off with origin stories of various human cultures. You guys have seen this if you've taken the first threshold, right? I got major pushback from my department. How dare you allow a moment in time where students are going to be talking about various cultures and their origin stories? How dare I? Why? Why not? Let's start that way, right? Nobody wants to address the pink elephant, or in our case in the States, the orange elephant in the room. But that's how we should start. And then we get to this story, which integrates some of that stuff, but from a scientific perspective. So I'm going to be, I'm not going to go through each of these, but essentially we've been telling origin stories for thousands of years about how the universe and humans came to be. Big history is a modern scientific origin story told by a global community. It's the most inclusive story I've encountered. And at a time where we are creating more divisions than unity, it's an important piece of our pie. Especially when we're talking about the periodic table of elements. Just a quick survey. Who, when they were younger, had to memorize the periodic table? I did. Absolutely no context, by the way. Just memorize it, fill in the blanks, right? When I took chemistry for 2 years, I had no context of how chemistry fit into biology. I mean, could you imagine me saying this right now? Gives me a headache, okay? But of course, it's everything to do with each other. Chemistry, astronomy, biology. We are the ones, Claudio said it best, we are the ones who create these divisions. Paolo, my brother with the same name, said the same thing yesterday, right? We create these divisions so we can understand the universe around us. And that's fine. We did that. Now, it's time to bring it all together again. Big history does that. Chuck D. Anybody heard of Chuck D? Not the rapper, but Charles Darwin. Okay? Charles Darwin makes this point, of course, that all living systems are interconnected. Life on Earth is a unity, an interacting and genetically related community of beings bound together in inseparable relationships in space and time. I'm currently working on an article about the little big history of Charles Darwin. Nobody take that idea. I'm doing it. Okay. We can work together. To publish, oh, fantastic. I'm working on that. Thank you, Lucy. Of course, the Earthrise photo I stole from Ian Crawford. Sorry, I had to do it. I did give you credit at some point. I'm going to skip over some of these slides because I want to come back to a point that Lucy made and James made and Peter made this morning. At the end of the day, it's all about humans. For me, it's more specifically about these two Homo sapiens, who I'm very proud to have here with me at this conference today. But if you think about it in the context of big history, in the context of journey of the universe, humans are the creative result of the self-organizing principles found in the universe. And how fortunate and lucky we are that these elements came together and gave, literally, consciousness to the universe. We can argue about what consciousness means and which organisms are conscious outside of Homo sapiens, and there are a lot of organisms which are. But at the end of the day, you are the universe in conscious form. That's pretty powerful. And to share that with students across the board, whether it's biology majors or astronomy majors or liberal studies majors or history majors, you name it, is a powerful message that big history can deliver. And as a result, I think we should even talk about it more, not only in the context of learning outcomes. Students will be able to. Thank you very much.
Questions or comments? Yes.
Yes.
So, I think you misunderstand or you misinterpret.
I'm sorry?
I think you misunderstand or you misinterpret my point about 9 billion years.
Yes.
We don't need to fill it in. You know what happened in those 9 billion years. My point is that it's important and it should be part of the big history story, and you cannot jump from the synthesis of the elements to the creation of the solar system and think that nothing happens in between those times. That isn't a legitimate story. You have to tell the correct story.
I agree with you 100%. And so what I would add on to that is, why don't we then have a graduate course in that piece which deals with that detail? Because I think there's a lot of stuff that's missing in that lower division scale. I can make the same case for our biology course. We ended up fitting in everything within a 1 semester course that I think is ridiculous. So why don't we then have, if you want more details in there, which I do agree with you, we have it, okay, let's do it. But maybe we should think about how we should also separate the big history thresholds or pieces into upper division or higher level courses. Because you can't fit everything into 1 semester. I'm thinking of it from an academic point of view. I can't teach all 9 thresholds in detail in 1 semester. I can't do it.
Okay, but you cannot pretend that 2/3 of the history of the universe is not important.
Of course not. I don't think anybody would say that.
Okay, yes, and. Well done. All right, another comment. Yeah.
Well, okay, because I'm told about my Toppen's work. Life in itself is a probabilistic event. I'm looking from another point of view, by the way. first one being the chemical evolution and emergence of life. From there onward, now that you got to a human, it is also probabilistic. So it's not enough to say that you feel humble in the grand scheme of things. The reason behind it is this, that if, I'll speak from a personally directed toward me because I don't want to offend anyone in this forum, because I feel people will take the wrong side, get the wrong message. Right. If my mother, take my mother's egg, for example, take my father's sperm, right? If that sperm had been different, now that millions of those sperms are delivered, I would have been a different person. I may not have been here. So my being in this forum actually is a probabilistic event after the first probabilistic event of life being on planet Earth. So really, the whole thing is a probabilistics, and it's a grand scheme of things. I feel just normal. I'm glad to be here and taking part. I just want the forum to realize, actually, if my mother's egg had been slightly different, the same sperm, I still would have been different. See, the permutation is phenomenal, astronomical. Can't even bear to think about it. But that's all it's my turn anyway next.
Come on down.
So, thank you very much. I'm going on about it.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.